Welcome to Turning Pages, the podcast where we explore the power of self-healing, the wisdom in books, and the strength of a positive mindset. I'm your host, Mel, and each week I have the pleasure of interviewing authors, coaches, and everyday people who inspire and encourage us to live our best lives. Together, we'll dive into insightful conversations that help you turn the pages into the next chapter of life. Whether you're on a journey of personal growth or simply looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. Let's turn the pages together.
There's absolutely nothing you wouldn't do relentlessly, endlessly.
Hi, Danny. Welcome to Turning Pages. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm just going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and do most of the talking today because I have some extremely bad construction going on in the background.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm super excited for our conversation. I will start with introducing myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Danica Nelson. Lots of folks like to call me Danny. I am a finance and travel content creator and educator. I am originally from Toronto, Canada, but currently today calling in from Malaga, Spain, which is one of the most southernmost parts of Europe, actually. We're very close to Morocco, which is pretty cool. And I have been living here since December 2023. I have a 1-year visa because I really love this lifestyle of, trying to sample what living in different parts of the world are for shorter periods of time. So that's where I'm at today.
How did you get started on your journey? Like what was the pivotal moment for you to start the travel and also the financial content?
For sure. So I'll start with the travel side of things. I did not grow up with a lot of money, and I did not get to take, the family vacations like a lot of my peers got to take. That just was not an option for me because the money that we had, it was to eat and it was to pay rent. So as soon as I was able to start making my own money, I made it a priority to spend it on seeing the world. That's what meant a lot to me. So as of today, I have officially visited 27 countries, which I think is so cool. I'm trying to get to 30 very soon. And yeah, I've always been into like travel and exploration, but in about 2019, actually in about 2018, I discovered the concept of digital nomadism, which is, working remotely from anywhere in the world, staying in different parts of the world, different countries, different cities for any amount of time that feels right to you. Some folks stay there for a few weeks, some folks stay for a few months. For me right now, I'm in Spain for a year. And I kind of got obsessed with this concept because I'm like, this is perfect. I can still make money. I can still feed myself. I can still support myself, but I can keep up these travels. I no longer need to, use my 2 or 3 week vacations that are given to me at work. I can actually extend them for much longer periods of time. So in 2019, I decided I was going to take what I call a Liberty leave. And a lot of people call it a sabbatical or, just like a long vacation. But I'm a marketer, so I wanted to make it fun and an alliteration. So I took what I call a Liberty leave. And I define a Liberty leave as the act of leaving behind what doesn't bring you liberty for what does. And what wasn't bringing me liberty at that time was I was really burnt out. I was doing a lot of the same thing. And I was kind of like caught up in this trap that we get into sometimes, where it's just like the routine, we're familiar with it, we do it every day, it works, but it's not necessarily bringing us liberty or lighting us up. So I had a full-time job at the time and I was working for the company for about 11 years at that point. I had a great relationship with my manager. So I said, hey, I need to take 6 months off from work to travel the world. And I, of course, made sure that I laid out my game plan in a way that made it sound like I deserved what I was asking for. I made sure to highlight my strengths, all of my accomplishments within the job, etc. And he was aligned. He was actually really excited for me because he said he wished he was able to do something like that when he was my age. I was 29 at the time. So it got approved and I was off on my first Liberty leave. My first Liberty leave was a solo trip and I took it to Southeast Asia. I went to Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines, and had the time of my life. A lot of people thought that I was absolutely insane as a Black woman going to all these Asian countries by myself, but I had the time of my life. It was truly a life highlight for me, and I would recommend it to anyone who has like the privilege to do so. Of course, you have to get it approved from your work if you have a job. You have to save up for it because these things are not cheap, especially if you're not working alongside the trip. But it was a life-changing experience for me, and that was in 2019. I had to come back a little bit earlier than the 6 months because COVID showed up and COVID started in that part of the world. So I had to get out of there very quickly. But as soon as I was able to kind of relive that experience of being abroad for a long period of time, I took the opportunity. And as I mentioned now, in 2023, I moved to Malaga, Spain with my partner, and we are here for 1 year. So that is my very long-winded travel story.
What advice would you give anyone who wants to get on that journey but wants to live the nomad life, travel and work? What is there a particular field that they should be looking into, getting into? And what about financial savings before you even pursue something like this?
Yeah, for sure. In terms of Okay, there's a few things I would suggest for folks. In terms of work, you would want to be able to do things that you can do remotely. So, maybe being a nurse, maybe being a cleaner, that's not going to work out so much remotely. But if you were to pick up a level of expertise or a skill set that allows you to work online, like doing digital marketing, for example, I'm a marketer myself, or content creation, those things obviously work really well online. A very popular line of work for digital nomads is virtual assistants. So if you're really good at planning or project managing, being a virtual assistant or an operations manager is a great role. You can look at things like, coding websites if you're into web development, if that's the type of thing that would work for you. Basically, any skill set that can allow you to work online is a great place to start because first of all, a lot of these roles tend to pay quite high, but you can also do them from anywhere in the world, which gives you that option of tapping into your liberty and, moving to the other side of the planet if you'd like to. In terms of savings, so I would also always say that this kind of starts with research. What city or what country do you actually want to have this experience in? Or is it multiple countries? The website that I recommend for folks to do their research on is called Numbeo, Numbeo. And it's basically a website that has cost of living comparisons between different countries, different cities, etc. So you can see, okay, compared to where I live right now, what would be the difference if I were to live in Malaga, Spain? Or what would be the difference if I were to live in Chiang Mai, Thailand? And it kind of gives you like a base level understanding of how much money you would need to be able to live there. So for example, one of the reasons that I chose to move to Malaga, Spain, is it's about 38% less expensive than where I was living before in Toronto. So I know that, even though I don't have a, really well-paying tech job right now, I would still be able to survive financially because the cost of living is actually significantly decreased. Plus, I'm living with my partner, so we would be splitting that 2 ways. So first, you want to find out how much you actually need to save in the first place, or how much you would need to be earning to be able to fulfill and maintain this lifestyle. And then also, you're going to want to look at savings as well, because if you're doing entrepreneurship, if you're freelancing, etc., sometimes the money is not always consistent. I can speak from experience there, and it's definitely highs and lows. So always recommend for folks to have like a good amount of savings. And in order to do that, again, you have to come up with a plan. If you know that you need maybe $3,000 a month to survive in this country, and you know that maybe you're going to be making $1,000 a month, do the math to see, okay, I need to save up this amount of money just in case I don't get any other work so that, I'm not going to be homeless in these other countries, because that actually does happen quite often as well. So it's all about research. It's all about saving and, coming up with the best decision for you.
Do you have any websites that you can recommend if someone is looking for, let's say, freelance work or digital assistance or digital marketing in that field, where they can probably go online to see, okay, this is something I could do? Does it usually work when you do that? Is it on a contract basis with the particular company?
Yeah, it kind of depends. There's so much different types of work out there. You can get full-time remote jobs. Those are highly competitive though, if they're truly fully remote. So you got to be really good and really on your game to land those. But there are also contract opportunities, freelance opportunities. You kind of just got to do your research. And One of my favorite websites is weworkremotely.com. They do a lot of different postings for different types of companies. And then also, just like your basic, your LinkedIn, your Glassdoor, and things like that, to find remote work. There's so many different websites these days. You just kind of got to look out for them.
So while going through your social media, I did see you speak about like sinking fund and high yield savings account. For those of us who are not familiar with the lingua, the language of money, how can we as women be better with our money, when it comes to stocks, savings? If you can just give us a brief, explanation as to how we could have a better relationship with money, but also understand the language of money.
For sure. I would say, start small and start slow because money can actually be extremely intimidating. I was intimidated from money before I started investing. And actually, I can just give you a brief history on my relationship with money over the years as well. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't grow up with a lot of money, and the only thing I was really taught was to save. Save all of your money, don't spend it. That was kind of the extent of the financial literacy that I was taught from my mom. And my mom was a single mom. So again, we didn't have a ton of it, and we really had to make do with what we had. But as I grew older and really started to realize that I do not want to be poor when I grow up, and I really want to, live a lifestyle of liberty and freedom, I really committed to just following all of these like amazing women financial educators and content creators on different social platforms. I started reading different blogs. I started watching YouTube videos. I won't recommend a lot of the specific ones because the ones that I follow are very Canadian, and I know that your audience is probably worldwide. So it depends. But I would say, commit to actually doing the thing, reading your resources to understand. And always understand that, your money, keeping cash under a mattress, like a lot of us are taught, or keeping your money in a checkings account that is earning 0% interest, it's a missed opportunity. There are so many opportunities out there for us to make our money make money. We just need to do the research and understand where to put the money to make it make money. So for me, I like to say in terms of like the beginner level is the high interest savings account, like you mentioned earlier. Rather than keeping your money, all of your money in a checking account that earns 0% interest or cash under the mattress, which we know is not going to be great because inflation is very real and the purchasing power of that money just decreases over time. We need to be doing our research to find banks that are actually going to pay us for holding our money in those accounts. So there'll be different banks for Canada, US, etc. But doing your research to make sure that you're not keeping it in a 0% bank account is already you're doing better than nothing. When I first started, I was making, maybe if I was putting like a couple $100s a month in a savings account, because it was in a high interest savings account, maybe I'd earn like 30 or 40 extra dollars per month, just from keeping it there. And it's not a ton of money, but it adds up over time. And it also kind of teaches you this behavior of, oh, I can make money by not doing anything. I like this feeling. And then you kind of go to the next level, which is investing. So investing is something that I was really afraid of when I first started. I didn't start investing until 2020 when we were in lockdown and I was kind of bored. And I'm like, okay, I guess I should probably learn how to do this thing that a lot of the rich white men do because I'm trying to get rich too. And a lot of the times people like myself even think that investing is reserved for rich white men on Wall Street. But that's not the case anymore. There are so many different platforms and banks and financial institutions that have really democratized investing. We can literally do it from our phones now. We don't have to necessarily go into banks. We don't need to have meetings with folks. Like we can do a lot of this ourselves completely DIY if we know what we're doing. So one investing product that is very popular for investors, for beginner investors, is called a robo-advisor. And basically, a robo-advisor is kind of what it sounds like. It's a robot that manages your entire portfolio for you. So you answer a few questions like, what is your risk tolerance? How comfortable are you with money going up and down? Because a lot of people are afraid of that. A lot of people have a very low risk tolerance to start, which is totally okay. It'll also ask you things like, when do you plan to retire? When are you going to need this money? Different questions like that. And what it will do is it will design a portfolio for you based on what you've said. And every time you put money into the robo-advisor, it'll actually invest in stocks for you. Now, is it going to get you the highest possible returns out there? Probably not, because it's a robo advisor. It's not a human, right? But it's still better than nothing, and it's still better than keeping your money in an account that's not making you any money at all. And then just one level above that, which is where I am today, is investing in something called ETFs. So an ETF means exchange traded fund. And you can kind of think of it like a basket of stocks. So rather than putting $100 in Google, you could buy an ETF, which is a basket of stocks and has a bunch of different companies in it, maybe a bunch of different tech companies, including Google. And you don't have to do the labor of, buying this individually, buying this individually. It's all done at once for you. It's super easy to manage. And again, it gives you that diversification and helps your money make money. So we could probably do a whole episode on investing. I won't go there, but there's definitely a lot of levels to how you can get started with making your money make money.
With the website that you mentioned for Canadians, because I do have some Canadians that are my viewers, does that allow us, like, we just everything can be done on that platform where we can invest in stocks? And can we invest also in the ETFs through that platform, or does it have to be done separately?
Yeah, everything can be done in a single platform. So for my fellow Canadian listeners, Wealth Simple is my favorite. It's where I started, and you can do everything. I've managed my entire portfolio from my phone, which is amazing. You can do the robo advisor option, which is, like I said, the robot manages it for you. You can buy individual stocks. You can buy ETFs. You can buy cryptocurrency if you're into that. I don't recommend it, but you can do that as well. And there are so many other options as well in Canada. There's like all of the banks have their own investing platforms, which you can access through your phone as well. There's Questrade, which is another financial institution. So many different options. I always recommend for people to start with the platform they're already familiar with. So if you already have a bank account with TD Bank, just open your investment account with TD Bank because you're familiar with it. It'll be the same set of logins and you can kind of just figure it out.
And the psychology with money, because I know you said that you didn't grow up with much, and I know that's another thing that I've seen across platforms when we talk about money. It's the relationship with it. So I know I come from a Caribbean background, and we have a lot of uh, language that tells us, you don't deserve it, that you don't, you're not entitled to it, or money's not everything. But what makes you feel as if you want money, you're somehow inherently bad for it, just sort of guilty. Of course, we have also religion that comes into play that might give us also that language. So how can we reframe our psychology and relationship with money? When we hear things like, the money's the root of all evil, or rich people are bad, and just for even wanting nice things, it's almost as if you're materialistic or you're superficial. How do we really untie some of those things that we've been brought up with?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I grew up in a Caribbean household as well. My parents are Jamaican, so I've heard a lot of those very similar sentiments. And the way I see it is we deserve to be wealthy. And I'm not talking about like billionaire status, because let's be honest, there are no good billionaires, but we deserve to be comfortable. We deserve to be able to have the things that bring us joy. And it's all about balance too, right? It's not because we don't want this money necessarily only because we want to ball out and buy all of these expensive, crazy designer purses and cars and mansions and things like that. But there's nothing wrong with us going on a journey to financial freedom to be able to ensure that we're comfortable during our retirement years, to ensure that we can take breaks when we need them, quit toxic jobs when we need them, and not be forced to stay there because we need the money to survive. We deserve to be able to help others and actually have the financial means to support others through donations or teeth when we need to. So I think that, it's really just like a reframing of understanding we do deserve to be wealthy. And yes, there is a point that, money can be the root of some evil, but money is not necessarily the root of all evil. And, we deserve to be happy and comfortable. We don't necessarily need to live these lives of struggle.
Well, when it comes to spending, because we do live in a time now. I mean, I go on TikTok and Instagram, and I feel sometimes those platforms have now become the basically a commercial. So it's like a commercial one after the other. How do we spend without emotion, like not being emotional spenders? What are like what tips can you give us to be like, okay, no, we don't necessarily need that lipstick because we have about like 10, you know? While it's good to want those nice things, I feel like we're over consuming products, overbuying things that we don't necessarily need. What tips do you have for emotional spenders?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that as humans, we are emotional people, and buying things that we don't necessarily need can often fill that dopamine hit that we need because again, we're human. I think it's first, let's start with acknowledging that. Like, yes, we need to keep it in control, but I wouldn't feel guilty for being an emotional spender because, that's things happen sometimes. And like you said, we are constantly exposed to this world of you need this. Oh my gosh, I just unboxed this and now you need it. Like, that's very much the society that we live in, especially with these social media platforms. So I would say, first and foremost, design your follower count, or sorry, design well who you follow. You are in control of your social media feed. So if you follow an influencer that is constantly trying to convince you that you need things and you know that you're following for it, but you know that you can't necessarily afford these things, unfollow them. And that goes for anyone who just makes you feel bad about yourself. Anyone who's like, flaunting their things and makes you kind of feel less than, unfollow them. Like, I don't follow any celebrities because I often feel like crap about myself after I look at their lives and, sometimes get into this trap of what I like to call like obsessive comparison disorder because you look at their life, you're like, oh, well, I don't have that, but maybe if I buy this one thing, at least I'll have like a piece of that. No, let's, take control of who we're following. And if they do not bring us joy and in the ways that we need to, unfollow. Same thing with our email list. A lot of people are subscribed to different like promotional emails from our favorite retailers, and we're constantly, being shoved down our throats like this is on sale, you need this now, new products. Unsubscribe. Do an audit of your current inbox, go through everything and anything that is making you feel like tempted to spend money on something that you don't need to, hit unsubscribe. Just do it, get it over and done with, to kind of just avoid that temptation. Ultimately, I think it's all about balance. Like, I don't think that we should be too restrictive because that sometimes in multiple categories can cause people to binge, whether it's eating, spending, etc. So it's about balance. But yeah, just design what media you're consuming. And if it's not doing what it's supposed to do, change it.
Sorry, the construction, it was a little bit too loud there. Uh, so with your content creation, because I myself have just started with social media, so this is probably a personal tip question here. So I started with the social media with the podcasting and just being more active. And also, I am a certified life coach and I haven't really done anything with it. So I'm now saying, okay, yes, let me venture out. But I know content creation, and I've also did a little bit of studies in digital marketing. How do we, I guess, one, overcome, for me, I feel like it's the imposter syndrome. How do we overcome the the shyness of the camera and strategy wise, like how should content creation be done? Should it be done like evergreen, organically? Is there a one size fit all for content creation, or is it just really you have to like have your niche? You can't be in, 5 different things at once?
Yeah, all really good questions. I made sure to write them down so I could touch on each topic. So, in terms of how to overcome, the shyness or imposter syndrome, I think you're already doing it by starting a podcast and showing up on social media. And like you reached out to me on social media. That's how we're connected today. So, I think already you're doing great in that. I would also acknowledge that a lot of people are terrified of showing up on social media. A lot of people are terrified of being perceived by strangers. So I think it's just really important to keep in mind your why. Like, why are you doing this? And I would guess that, you being a whole certified life coach, it's because you want to transform people's lives and help them with that, right? So, one, remind yourself that you are more than qualified to be able to do this. Um, and then just keep in mind that, you're doing it by doing this, you are helping people, you are giving them access to information that will transform their lives. And like, that's really admirable. So I would just keep that in mind for sure. And in terms of the strategy, so this can look different for everyone. I I have a very love-hate relationship with content creation because it can be really exhausting and it can burn a lot of people out. I've been burnt out so many times in social media content creation. I have to take breaks often. I have to reassess my strategy often and kind of how I want to show up. I would say that my number one tip for folks is come up with a schedule that you can be consistent with. Even if that's one post per week, do that, at least so that people can associate you with a specific type of content. They know when you plan to drop, and they kind of, build this relationship with you and know what to expect. So for me, for example, I started my content creation journey in 2020. And what I would do is every Monday, I would drop what I called like a Money Monday post. So it was one post, it had to do with some different type of financial topic, and that was it. I had a full-time job. I did not have time to be on stories and posting every day and chasing algorithms and using trending audio. I was not about that life. So I just was able to be consistent with my one Money Monday post, and it blew me up. It grew my audience significantly to a point that, I was able to grow a little bit and be able to do this full time now. So whatever you can do to be consistent, just start with that and just make sure that you do it with mindfulness to not burn yourself out, because burnout in content creation is very popular. And also keep in mind, you don't need to be present on every single platform. A lot of content creators think that you have to be on Twitter, you need to be on Threads, you need to be on TikTok, you need to be on Instagram, you need to be on YouTube. You will burn yourself out. This is a recipe for burnout. I would say choose a few platforms that make sense for your content. And then if it makes sense later, you can, expand from there. But focus on doing one or two things really well before you start doing all of the things. Because again, it is a recipe for burnout, and you don't want to just disappear from the face of the content creation earth because you are so burnt out. And then the last question that you has is like, is it a one size fits all? And do you need to like stick to a niche? This is something that I honestly struggle with quite often because we're told that we have to have a niche. We have to fit ourselves into this one box to be successful and so that people will know what to associate you with. But we're humans, and I'm a multifaceted human. I have so many different passions, I have so many different talents, and it's actually really stressful for me to try to fit myself into a box. So when I'm explaining my biography to people, I'll say, yeah, I'm into travel and finance, but there are so many different aspects of those that make up my life, plus more. Like I also really like food. A lot of my stories will be consistently about like different foods and different journeys that I take around the world to eat. And, yes, there will always be linked to kind of these underlying themes of finance and travel, but it's not necessarily like I'm only talking to you about financial advice today. It's just not who I am. It's not sustainable for me. And in order to make this content creation journey enjoyable, I want to talk about whatever I want to talk about. So, not a one size fits all. Maybe you do want to stick yourself into one niche because you're comfortable with that. That's totally cool too. But I wouldn't say it's a necessity to be a successful content creator.
Yeah, I can relate with the burnout because I do work a full-time job, and even starting the podcast, I know I had kept myself open on my schedule every day after work, but then I was also doing gym after work. And I noticed that, hey, and I'm the one who has to do the editing. I do all my, stuff, my social media stuff myself. So graphics, everything like that, I'm doing it myself. So I was just like, okay, we need a slower pace. And I don't think even with the platforms, I absolutely agree with that because I realize I'm like, I can't do every platform because I know some you have to show up on some platforms a bit differently. Like you'll show up on Instagram differently than you would show up on TikTok or on YouTube. And I know you can make one, B-roll or stuff like that and kind of like distribute it throughout the entire platforms. Do you use any scheduling services to schedule your content?
I have used them before. I've used Buffer before. I've used Later before. I've used Planoly before. But ultimately, I've decided I don't really love them because specifically for video content, they take away the quality of it. And like I'm shooting in 4K, everything looks amazing. But once you upload it to these websites and they distribute them, the quality is lost. I'm like, I didn't, put so much effort into that lighting, into the crispness for it to just be lost. So now I kind of just do everything manually. But one other thing that I was going to say, as someone who had a podcast before, and I will never do a podcast again because it burnt me out so badly. My my role moving forward, my rule moving forward is I will only do a podcast again if I am able to outsource the editing and the social media for it because it is absolutely a recipe for burnout. So props to you for doing it all on your own because I know firsthand how tough it can be. And I recently discovered this website called Upwork. Are you familiar with it? I would definitely recommend checking out Upwork because there's a whole bunch of talented folks on there from all around the world who do things like editing your podcasts for you. There's also a website called Fiverr, Fiverr, that does something similar. Yeah, you can find different types of freelancers or consultants to take those roles on for you. Depending on where they are, like there's different costs associated with it. And if it's worth the investment, highly recommend looking into it to save yourself some time and energy.
Yeah, it is challenging. Thankfully, hope my full-time job kind of gives me a little bit of wiggle room that I could, edit and stuff like that. But I have been thinking about going on Fiverr and just like, okay, at least do the editing for me. Initially, though, for the this beginning stages, I wanted to learn. I want to learn the program myself. So I'm just like, okay, just in case it's something new. I guess I love being a student, constantly being a student of always learning. So yeah, I understand the burnout with doing everything and outsourcing. Um, as we're talking about outsourcing, though, is there anything that you recommend? Because I know there's this book called The 4 Hour Work Week, which he talks like what I took away from his book was the outsourcing when it came to money management and a lot of money content creators and stuff like that. They do promote that outsourcing, whether it's like your housekeeper, a chef, stuff like that. What are your views on that? Whether if it's like work or personal?
Yeah, he got in a lot of trouble for that part. I've read that book before, and I love a lot of the concepts from it because they actually introduced, or he actually introduced me to like this concept of like digital nomadism and moving to places with lower cost of living. But I do think it's important to keep in mind that we shouldn't be exploiting people. And a lot of what he was saying in that book is, go move to the Philippines and hire a cleaning lady for $5 an hour. I'm paraphrasing, but you have to be careful with those things. I think it's still important to like pay people their worth and just be mindful of the way that we talk about, like, oh, this country is so cheap. It's cheap to a lot of people who come from North America, for example, because we have currencies that are stronger. But when you go to a lot of these places in the world, like, Southeast Asia, their currencies are not as strong. Their minimum wage is considerably lower. Yeah, important to keep those things in mind. But in general, though, I've loved the concept of outsourcing. because it'll save us from burnout. And I think that as creators and as creatives, we should reserve our time and energy for the things that no one else can do. And for you and I, that's, showing up with our voices, showing up on camera, etc.
Great. Is there anything um, that women in particular should be concerned about when it comes to money and travel, like with travel when it comes to safety, money when it comes to retirement? We are living in a time now where we have more women that are single, and some are choosing not to be married, which is fine, and some are just not, married. So we have to be a little bit more independent, living in a one single household. I know I'm just shouting out like questions here. I'm sorry. Um, so I guess, well, the first one is like the safety when it comes to travel. And then with women who are single and providing for themselves, being their sole provider, what kind of words of wisdom can you give us?
For sure. So when it comes to travel, we obviously need to be significantly more careful than men. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of things. So some safety tips that I take when I travel solo, which I do quite often, is, first of all, make sure someone always knows where you are. Always tell your friends or family, give them your whole itinerary so that if something were to happen, they would be able to locate you. Another tip that I tell people, women all the time, is to lie. Lie, lie, lie when you are on vacation. Do not, if you don't have to, never tell people, what your plans are. Don't tell people where your hotel is. Tell people that your husband or your brother is on the way so they never think that you're in like a foreign country by yourself. Just never, victimize yourself, or I shouldn't say that. Never, make someone feel like you would be a good victim to try to take advantage of. And that's where, the lying comes in. Also, it's a good idea to just do your research of the companies that you do plan to travel to. Some of them are just really not safe for solo women. Some of them don't necessarily approve of women being by themselves in these countries, or women having their own authority, or to be able to do things by themselves. So researching where you're going is important. I also always like carry my own like external door lock. If I'm staying in places like hotels and Airbnbs, that I'll like wedge behind the door just in case, if anyone were to try to come in, like they would have that barrier. There's so many different tips that we need to take to make sure that we stay safe. And one last one that I'll share actually, because I find a lot of women do this, is they go to different countries, and because they don't want to spend money on a SIM card, they will just depend on public Wi-Fi. So they will, get to the airport and just try to call like their Uber from the Wi-Fi and just hope for the best. Or, when they go out for an evening to dinner, they kind of just like hope that they can get Wi-Fi at the restaurant, but they don't have Wi-Fi on their walk to the restaurant. We always need Wi-Fi. We always need access to a phone to potentially get us out of a scary situation. So please spend the money to make sure that we have consistent access to the internet. And one tip that I always tell folks is get an eSIM. eSIMs are super popular these days. I usually use a company called Airalo, AIRALO. You can literally just buy an electronic SIM card on your phone. You can buy some data with it, so you can always have it when you need it. So that's the travel side of the question. And you want me to answer the money one now? Yeah, okay. So in terms of steps that women should take to protect themselves, I guess, in the financial space and just make sure that they're taken care of, is kind of what I mentioned earlier. We need to do our due diligence to ensure that our money is making money. We cannot just work full-time jobs and not do the research of understanding, okay, how am I preparing for retirement, without doing the research of these high interest savings accounts that we mentioned earlier, without understanding how different like tax sheltered accounts works with retirement accounts, investing, etc. We cannot consider our partners to be our financial plan. A lot of women, unfortunately, think that, I'm not doing so well right now. I'm living above my means. I'm in debt. This is not working out. But as soon as I get a man or as soon as I get a partner, it's fine because he'll be rich. We can't be doing that. It's not safe. It's not realistic. And it puts you in a vulnerable situation because even if and when you are in a relationship, sometimes things happen. And in, relationships with domestic abuse, financial abuse is actually one of the most common types of domestic abuse. Like a lot of people will unfortunately be victim to partners taking away their credit cards from them or, revoking access from their shared bank accounts, preventing them from spending money or just being very controlling. So personally, I think that as women, we always need to have our own money. We always need to know how to make our money make money. We always need to be teaching ourselves how to up our financial literacy game so that, if worse comes to worse, we would be okay, whether we're single, whether we're partnered, etc.
So I have one more question when it comes to relationships and money. And I just wanted to touch on too with the being single, or whether you're your partner, whatever, the importance of having that financial um, literacy as a woman. Because I personally have witnessed so many people, they've been together for 10 years, and I guess, well, this will expand to the other question is like, how important is financial transparency when you're in a relationship? Because I've seen women be in relationships where they're with their partner probably 10 years, okay, they get divorced and whatnot, and they have absolutely no idea what is going on financially. They don't know what account is what. They don't know what visa they have, and these could also be working women. I'm just not talking about, a woman who is a housewife or anything. They're just not educated enough, to say, or even inquire it, because it's just sort of like, oh, well, he's taking care of it or the bills are paid. So let me just, rock back and not inquire about it. And then sometimes oftentimes you end up seeing that they're the ones left behind because they weren't aware. So how important is financial transparency too, also in relationships? Because I feel like that's a
It
tough
is.
conversation to have. Like, well, I'm single right now, but last night I was just preparing for this interview and I'm like, one of the things I know that's going to be one of the topics I have to get out front was like, no, we need to have the financial conversation. And money is so hard to talk to other people about. Yeah.
Yeah, those are great questions. And I actually relate to the story that you said about, how some women, when they divorce, they don't really know what's going on because they depended on their partner who's taking care of the bills. That exact thing actually happened with my grandmother. So her and my grandfather were married for 40 years, and he took care of everything. He took care of every single bill, every single bank account. I don't even think her name was on, like, I think he bought the house and she moved in. Like, none of that stuff she knew how to do. And when he passed away, it was an absolute disaster. We didn't know what banks they were with. We didn't like, it was literally a disaster. As you can see, I'm very passionate about this. And that's what taught me this can never happen again in our family. This will never happen again with anyone I know, anyone I coach financially, etc. We need to know what's going on. We cannot be, relying on our partners to take care of all of the things, because what happens if our partner, God forbid, something happens to them, if we separate, etc. Like, you're just lost. It's not sustainable. It's not a good idea. We absolutely need to know what's going on. And I think that money dates are really important. So, at first of all, for those who are like dating and getting to know people, I think it's important to ask money questions up front. And I know that talking about money is difficult, so maybe this isn't a first date conversation, but as you can like genuinely start to see a future with someone, I think it is really important to sit down and have that difficult discussion to talk about things like, okay, how, if we were to, marry or be together long term, how do you see us managing our finances? And you can ask questions like, are we going to be splitting things 50-50? Or how do you see the split working? Are you in any debt? So you should really know that to understand if you're going to marry this person, are you going to be marrying into debt? It's good to understand things like, what are your spending habits? Are you an emotional spender? Do you have any savings? Do you want to buy a home one day? If so, like, what's the plan for that? I think it's really important to have legitimate conversations to understand whether or not you and this person are financially compatible. Because romantically compatible, great, yeah, we like each other, we vibe, that's cool. But like, are we on the same level of like, financial expectations? I think that's really important. And for a lot of like BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, I think it's also important to understand, do you have any family members that you are supporting financially? Because that can be another added expense that can take away from the potential of you and your partner being able to build. If your partner has to support their family members back home, their mom, etc., that could prevent them from being able to save for your house one day, or to be able to, pay for your wedding or this vacation that you have coming up. So I would say any of your financial non-negotiables, like, write those down, potentially even before you meet this person, so you don't, maybe sway away from them when it's about time to have a conversation, just to understand what's really important to you. I think that's like so important.
What has or who has what content creators have you um listened to or YouTube? Because I know you said you don't really read books that much. What has inspired you or kept you motivated, say spiritually, um, with whether it's like self-help or just being creative, being a creative person? What has inspired you?
Yeah, I have an incredibly short attention span. So me and books, we just don't go well together, but I love my YouTubers and I love just following content creators over the years. One person I'm really into right now, his name is, or his social media name is levels.io. He is a white man, and I typically don't, idolize white men because I like to see myself in who I look up to. But what I really like about him is he created a website called Nomad's List, which I think he actually just renamed to nomads.com. And it was the first website that I found that basically ranks different cities in the world that are popular with nomads to live in. And it ranks them from everything from safety for women, safety for like, are people of color safe here? What is the cost of living? How much does rent cost? How much does an Uber ride cost? How much does milk cost? He's really good at kind of he's been a prominent figure in kind of pioneering that space in the research for folks to be able to move abroad. But also, he kind of has this mantra as an entrepreneur of just building a bunch of things and seeing what works. And what works, continue to invest in it. What doesn't work, F it, move on. I really like that kind of mindset he has, because I think it's important. I think a lot of people sometimes, when they know that this business idea that they have or this product that they have, they're no longer interested, it's not performing well, they've invested so much money into it, but they don't want to let it go. I think it's important to kind of have someone to look up to who's building a bunch of different things and lists all of their failed stuff, which he's very, transparent about. Um, and says, yeah, I tried this, it didn't work, but I moved on, and this works. It's just very motivating for me as a entrepreneur who's also multifaceted, trying a bunch of different things. A lot of other women that I look up to are Her First 100K on Instagram. She's great. She's the pioneer for I feel like she really pushes the high yield savings account. So yeah, she's great for sure. There's Vivian, Rich BFF. She's another woman from the States who's like really great at all things money. And then there's a lot of folks from in the community, the finance community in Toronto, that are my peers that I really look up to as well. So many that I'll just give you a list of them. But yeah, I just love to see women, specifically like Black, Indigenous, and women of color, who have figured out how to make money work for them, because it's not easy for us. The financial systems weren't necessarily designed for us to succeed. So I love women who have, gone above and beyond to learn how these things work. And then B, are teaching them to their community or sharing their journeys with their community, like myself, because I think we all deserve, like I said earlier, to be wealthy and to be on this path of financial freedom.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome that you're talking about money as a colored woman, because I know well, for me, my experiences within the colored community, it's usually a hush topic. Like, it's not polite that we speak about it. But I'm liking that I am seeing more people of color speaking, especially women, speaking about money because it's really important for us to have that financial literacy, but also think that we are enough to, live the life that we want to. And we were given so many opportunities now. Why not take advantage of it? You know?
Absolutely. And if we continue this tradition of being hush hush about money and taboo about money, we will never succeed financially. We need to be talking about money to be able to have money, to be able to grow our money, to be able to increase our level of financial literacy. Transparency is so important. And actually, another content creator that I really like, you might have seen her page, Salary Transparency Street. Her name is Hannah. She started her page like years ago. And she basically just goes on the street and asks people, how much money do you make and what's your job? And it really opens your eyes to understanding one, I'm being grossly underpaid in the job that I have now, or two, this other field that I've actually always been interested in makes 3 times the amount of money that I do. Maybe it's time for me to, do a career switch. So I think talking about money and being transparent is so important. And I want our community to stop demonizing these conversations about money because these are what are keeping us from being able to attain financial freedom.
Yeah, I think I came across a book, I think Make Your First Million. I can't remember her name, but I remember her story was she was homeless, sleeping in an airport, and she ended up having an idea to have an investment capital. So where it was only, Black and Indigenous people of color, and because Black owned companies are less funded by, corporate America. And she started this and she said she just started to pitch it, and it ended up, going. So now she invests in other Black owned companies. So it's good to see that the community is coming together and we're sort of awakening, with this money mindset and lifestyle. It's really amazing to watch, but we still have a lot of work to do, which is for sure. I know me based here in the Caribbean, I'm seeing it. I'm like, there's so much we need to wake up from and kind of dismantle the way we look and handle money and even travel. It's always like, no, that's not wise. Why are you spending your money on that? That sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely relate to that. When I took my 6 month trip to Asia, my family thought I was insane. They're like, you're going to stop working and spend all this money for an experience? And I had to remind them that life is about experiences. It's not necessarily about saving and hoarding money. Money is meant to be spent. And, I think it's important for us to kind of have that mindset that like money flows to me, money likes me and money will come back to me. Money is meant to be spent, money is meant to be made. I will always figure out ways to make more money. It's a mindset thing that we have to work on. I'm even still working on myself, but we have to believe it for it to truly happen.
Well, Danny, thank you so much for coming on. I absolutely enjoyed this conversation. I would love to have you back with probably a more structured based on money for women, if you're interested, of course. But thank you so, so much for coming on. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great discussion. I hope I was able to educate some folks on how to make money work better for them.
No, but yeah, for sure. I learned a lot. And one of the things I know I have some audiences, I told them that you were coming on and they're like, oh yeah, I have to watch it because I have one friend, she just took her first trip. She left the island and she took her first trip. And I told her, I said, if you get on that plane, I'm telling you, you are going to want to travel more. Okay.
Mhm.
So she's
Yep.
excited for this conversation. But thanks again.